Caleb, you reached the midway point of the season. After that Minnesota game, you guys obviously got off to the best start you've ever had in MLS. Last 10 games, specifically because of the road form, haven't been quite as good. When you and your staff are looking back at this first half, how do you evaluate the first 17 games?
Well, I haven't thought about the answer to that question, to be honest with you. I'm thinking about winning the next game. But now that you've asked the question, you said it. Obviously, if you just look at it as the 17 games and not the last two, then, we're in an okay position. But, for me, okay is not good enough based on the start that we had. And I think as a whole, I'm disappointed that we, didn't get any points out of the last two games. And that's really all I'm thinking about right now. I'm not really thinking about trying to, frame the first 17 games. I'm thinking about the next game and winning that game and continuing to, improve as a team. And, a part of getting results in this league, and I've said it every single year, is you got to manage injuries and you got to manage tough windows and tough conditions and international duties and suspensions with yellow cards. And, those are things that, we have to manage better.
When you look at the last two games, you made the lineup rotations in the midweek game in part to kind of create a little bit of competition and hopefully get the right mindset out of the guys, and you guys had another loss. What are your takeaways from the last two games, and how do you move past them and get a better performance?
Yeah, we'd always plan to rotate in that midweek game, but when we didn't get the result versus Colorado, we didn't rotate actually as much as we thought we would, but with the way that the back line played versus Colorado, with the guys that we have, Alvis, who has been a starter, Moby playing well in the games that he's played, with Marco, being a young player that's played starting minutes and wanting to get him a game. That was the reason we rotated in the back, to give some guys an opportunity, guys that had played. It wasn't out of the blue. They've all played minutes. But we just felt in getting some fresh legs, a fresh mentality, and because of the window, that it made sense to do that. Now, in saying that, we had a few mistakes in some of those positions, and now going into this last game of the window, we have to look at the last two games and make decisions based on what we think is going to win this game versus rotation.
Before the road trip, you had a number of timelines on the guys that have been hurt from Ridgewell, maybe looking at next week on down the line. Mm-hmm. Have any of those changed since the road trip, and is there anybody that you're expecting to be a little bit sooner or a little bit later?
Ridgewell, we're hoping next week, early Tuesday, start to train. Doesn't mean he'll be ready for KC, but he's still on track to meet that timeline. But there's quite a few days still in the return to play that there's quite a few steps that he has to take to be back in training Tuesday. But he's going to progress in the Alter G and running at full speed. He's going to continue to progress on the pitch, and assuming that goes well, he'll be back Tuesday. Barnby is looking better, could be in training tomorrow at the very least. He'll be in training early next week. So those are the two guys, right?
Yeah, I think remaining. Is Maddox going to be ready for a step up in minutes this weekend, or do you think because of just the turnaround that's a week away?
Yeah, as the weeks go on, obviously he'll be ready for more and more. We didn't feel in this game that originally we had thought we might rotate him in, but again, when you don't get the result Colorado, things change, and we, like I said, we probably, if we get that result Colorado, we rotate more, but we didn't feel we could do that, and with Maddox not being able to play, we felt 60 minutes physically that we didn't have that luxury. But yeah, I think another week of training. I don't think he's ready for 60 minutes in this game, after just 2 more days of training. But another week of training, he could be ready to play. But, then is he going to play? That's the key. But it's nice to have options.
The last 2 games, it's been more sort of individual isolated things, and it's been sort of structural problems. But nonetheless, it's been a rash of them. Previously, before that, you went 317 minutes without conceding, and then you give up 5 in 129 minutes, and
Yeah.
I don't think you'd disagree that a lot of them were not very good goals. What do you do as a coach? I mean, in that instance, when you've got a rash of that going on where it hasn't been before?
It's a great question. It's a great question. I felt really good after the Dallas game with how we had been defending, and I said it in the press conference how pleased I was with the individual performances as well. And if you remember in that game, we had a bunch of injuries, and we had to play Moby, we had to play Lawrence, had to play Roy Miller, in the back line with, so, and I was pleased with all the performances. So I think, in response to your question, I think sometimes you can be a little unlucky, but I also think you make your own luck. So we got to move on from it now. We've made these mistakes, and like you said, they haven't, and like I said, they haven't been good goals. But that does happen. It does happen, and that's soccer, and we got to move on from it. And my big thing going to this game is, in times like this is when you find out what you're made of as a player. I mean, you really find out what a player's makeup, his mental toughness is like after making mistakes. And as a team as well, when you go through a couple games where it's not gone your way. And, honestly, in looking back on both games, we didn't play poorly in the games, but we made some very poor mistakes that cost us the game. So we need to limit those critical mistakes, and that's going to always come down to the individuals. And we're going to see what some of these guys are made of in terms of overcoming those mistakes now and stepping up and making plays. And that's what I said to the group after the game. We got to stop making mistakes. It's that simple. And unfortunately, I can't do anything about that. It's got to be the player in the moment stepping up and making those plays. And I'm confident that we have guys that can do that, because prior to the last two games, what I saw was good. And so we can't keep dwelling on it either, because that's the thing. You can't turn one mistake into two, into three, because guys are keeping it in their heads. So sometimes that can happen. And, maybe with a few guys that happen. But we got to go in this game almost with a fresh, clear mind, and we can't be overthinking the mistakes that we made. But yeah, I said it. They weren't good mistakes. They weren't goals that you said, listen, those are great goals that the opponent, scored. And sometimes I'd rather have a goal where we get broke down, where I can analyze it and say, you know what, we did this wrong, and this is something I can correct on the pitch. That's easier sometimes to correct because you know that you can influence it. In this case, it's when the cross comes, clearing it out. It's when there's a pass central, making sure that you don't let guys run behind you. When there's a cross in the box, it's catching the cross. Those are little things that players have to address and execute and deal with in order for us to win games. And I'm confident, because I believe in the group and I believe in the individuals, that they will make those plays.
Given that the performances have been so different at home, at least recently, than on the road, and obviously the road is tougher with the travel, there's a lot of other factors that play into that, but do you feel like it just comes down to a mentality thing that they have to correct on the road, or how do you kind of analyze it when you see such different performances at home versus away?
Yeah, I don't know that it's such different, honestly. When you rewind back the last two games, like I said, the play wasn't poor. It really wasn't. I mean, obviously we're playing some teams that are weaker teams, so for me, that's what makes it more disappointing. But when you look at our performances and how we played, it's not like, I think even Diego Valeri said it was an even game last game, and again, going back to just watching it, the eye test, seeing all the trends of the game, they tell that same story. It's not like we were poor in those games. It's not like we were overrun in those games. What's frustrating is we deserved, I think, to get something out of the game if we didn't make those mistakes defensively. And so we didn't deserve to get something out of the game because we made some poor mistakes defensively. And that hadn't happened prior to that. So I think the combination of probably playing well enough to get something out of the game, scoring goals on the road, and playing in a positive way enough in the game. The teams that we're playing, factoring that in, and I think then looking at the mistakes that were made, not earned goals, but more individual errors, that's what makes those last 2 games so frustrating. But yeah, I don't think the performances have been that much different. I just think we've made some mistakes defensively in the last 2 games. Because when you look at our control of the last 2 games, our possession numbers, all that stuff, which is something we value because we put out a team to try to keep the ball at least half of the time, and we executed that. And we created chances, and we scored 2 goals in the last game, and we scored a goal and should have had more in the Colorado game. And when you look at the chances the opponent had, they weren't great chances. The goals they scored weren't off great, sequences. And so I really think if we make a few more plays, like I said, if we don't kick the ball in our own goal, if we catch a cross, if we don't, let a guy run behind on a routine, straight pass through our back 4, if we don't get beat on a counterattack, 1 pass, and another cross in the box, I mean, those are routine plays. If we don't, give up those goals, if we make those plays, we're saying how well we played on the road the last 2 games, honestly. But what you remember is the end result. What you remember is the mistakes. And, the only thing I'd say is, the opponent at home, they're always going to have a push again in the second half. And so I think that's maybe the other difference is the home team in the last 2 games had a push for periods in, each half and in the second half in particular. That's different than what you sometimes get when you're at home.
When you look at this game this weekend, this is a team, you said you liked your performance on the road against Seattle. So what do you need to do to turn that performance against this specific team? What are the keys for you to be able to get a result here?
We need to play the exact way we've been playing, but limit the defensive mistakes. It's that simple. You know what I mean? Because we're creating chances. We're keeping the ball. We're scoring goals. When you look at, call it the last 5 games. We're doing a lot right in the attack in the last 5 games. And chance creation, possession, and overall just play and control. And goals scored. The last 2 games in particular, individual errors. So that's all we need to do better. We need to make sure that we get the individuals in key moments, in key positions, making routine plays. And I'm confident we will this game, and if we keep playing the way we've been playing, then the result will be different.
Yeah, against Minnesota, there were times when there was a lot of vertical space between the back line and your D-mids. That is something that Seattle has a couple guys that really like to exploit that kind of space in Nico Lodeiro, Clint Dempsey. What do you need to do in the approach? I mean, it's kind of a funky field in Minnesota where it's really narrow but stretched really long.
Yeah.
That could have contributed to that. But what do you need to do here in this game against Seattle to shut that down?
I think a part of it, again, was just the way the game went. It was give up an early goal. Now we have to, open up a bit more and push. And, then we level it. We smell blood in the water. Start of the second half, we give up another goal. Now we're down 2-1, so now we got to push again. We go 2-2. I thought at 2-2 we were going to win the game. I mean, they looked rattled. We looked like, again, we smelled the win. We smelled the goal. And, at every point in the game when we started to push and get a goal and get in a position where we were going to push to get the next goal, we gave up a silly goal, But I think we were stretched out when we were pushing to level and pushing to win. But I don't ever remember them really getting in that space much enough to hurt us. I mean, when you look at the second goal, our shape was good. We had a good shape about us. We even had pressure on the ball when Molino got the ball, and somehow Ramirez just runs central, and so. I don't think we had, if we were stretched, I think it was because, like I said, we were pushing to score, and I didn't think they really created much on the day, to be honest with you, which was so disappointing. But Seattle, going back to that, I think we just need to continue to, play the way we've been playing, and I think we have been pretty organized in that back 6 and tight, call it the 8 with the wingers in. I think we've been pretty organized, and we can't give up the early goal. And we don't want to be stretched out in a game when we're chasing it versus Seattle, because while you might be able to gamble and do that a bit versus Minnesota, you don't want to be doing that versus Seattle, because more time and space for, like you said, Dempsey, Ladero, will mean a lot of problems.